The night I found out I wasn't invited to my own daughter's rehearsal dinner, I was standing in my kitchen in Portland, Oregon, folding the check I'd just written for $58,000. The final payment for Beverly's dream wedding. My name is Curtis Wheeler. I'm 59 years old, and I've been a construction engineer for 35 years before I retired last spring. I thought I knew how to read blueprints, how to spot structural problems before they brought the whole building down. Turns out I was dead wrong when it came to my own family. I'd already covered everything Beverly had circled in those glossy bridal magazines she'd been collecting since she was 12. The venue at Riverside Gardens, the fancy catering with those little appetizers that cost more per bite than my lunch, the photographer who charged extra for natural lighting, the flowers that had to be flown in from California, and the band that played one wedding a weekend because they were supposedly that good. Everything my late wife Marie would have loved to see. I was doing it for both of them. My kitchen table was covered with receipts and vendor contracts, all stamped paid in full in red ink. The marble countertops Marie had insisted on during our remodel 20 years ago reflected the overhead lights, making everything look official and final. I'd turned this kitchen into a command center for Beverly's wedding. Just like I used to set up job sites, I called Beverly to confirm the deposit went through. The phone felt heavy in my hand as I dialed her number. "Hey, sweetheart," I said when she picked up, "just letting you know the Riverside Gardens payment cleared. You're all set for Saturday." There was a pause. I could hear music in the background. Laughter, the clink of glasses, sounded like she was at a restaurant somewhere. "Oh, Dad, thanks." Her voice sounded distant, distracted. "That's great. So what time do you want me there Friday?" I asked, leaning against the kitchen counter where I'd written out that check an hour earlier. "For the rehearsal dinner?" I was thinking I could come early, help set up if you need anything. Another pause, longer this time. I could hear her moving, probably stepping away from whoever she was with. Then a different voice cut in, Wesley, my soon-to-be son-in-law, smooth and practiced, like he'd been rehearsing this conversation. "Hey, Curtis, actually the rehearsal dinner is just for the wedding party and immediate family. You know, keeping it intimate, small, and meaningful." I switched the phone to my other ear, my free hand gripping the edge of the granite counter. "Immediate family. I'm her father, Wesley. I am immediate family." Right, he said, and I could picture him doing that thing where he adjusts his tie when he's trying to sound important. "But it's really just the people in the ceremony. Beverly's bridesmaids, my groomsmen, our parents who are walking us down the aisle. You get it? Our parents who are walking us down the aisle, but I was walking her down the aisle. I was the one giving her away. I'd been planning that moment since the day she was born. I'm walking Beverly down the aisle," I said, my voice quiet. "Actually," Wesley said, and I could hear Beverly whispering something in the background. "We decided my dad and Uncle Vernon will do it together. You know, since Marie isn't here, it feels more balanced that way." The words hit me hard. Uncle Vernon, Marie's brother who lived 2 hours away in Salem and saw Beverly maybe twice a year at Christmas and her birthday. He was walking my daughter down the aisle, not me. I looked around my kitchen at the wedding planning materials spread across every surface, at the checkbook still open with the carbon copy of that $58,000 check visible in the dim light from the range hood. The room suddenly felt too small. "Beverly," I said, my throat tight. "Is that true?" She came back on the line, her voice small. "Dad, it's just Wesley's family is really traditional, and they thought it would be nice if the family was represented equally on both sides." I didn't hear the rest. The phone felt like it weighed 50 pounds in my hand. I walked over to the sliding glass door that led to our back deck, looking out at the yard where I'd taught Beverly to ride her bike, where Marie and I had hosted her graduation party, where we'd spent countless summer evenings grilling burgers and watching Beverly practice cartwheels. "Dad," Beverly said, "are you still there?" "Yeah, I managed. I'm here. You understand, right? It's not personal. It's just this is our day and we want it to be perfect." Our day, the day I'd been saving for since she was born, the day I'd liquidated part of my retirement account to pay for, the day I'd sold Marie's vintage Mercedes, the car she'd restored herself in our garage, to cover the last-minute upgrades Beverly insisted on. "Sure," I said, staring at my reflection in the dark glass of the sliding door. "I understand. Great. So we'll see you Saturday at the ceremony. 200 sharp. Love you, Dad." The line went dead before I could answer. I stood in my kitchen holding a silent phone, staring at the checkbook, still open on the counter, $58,000. That number stared back at me. It wasn't the biggest check I'd written for Beverly, not even close. There was the $15,000 for the down payment on her condo when she and Wesley first moved in together 2 years ago. The $8,000 I'd quietly transferred when their credit cards maxed out during the holidays last year. The $12,000 for Wesley's business venture that was supposed to revolutionize something or other, but never quite got off the ground. I'd kept telling myself it was what fathers do. You help, you support, you make sure your child has opportunities you didn't have. But this being replaced by Uncle Vernon, being excluded from the rehearsal dinner like I was some distant relative who might say the wrong thing, this was different. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in Marie's old reading chair in the living room, the one with the blue fabric that she'd picked out at a furniture store in downtown Portland 15 years ago. The needlepoint cushion she'd made was still there, a little faded but sturdy. I stared at our wedding photo on the mantel above the fireplace. We'd gotten married at City Hall with 2 witnesses and $47 between us. No catering, no band, no Riverside Gardens, just love and a promise to stick together through whatever came next. And we'd kept that promise through my teaching salary and her nursing shifts, through the miscarriage before Beverly, through my mother's long illness, through Beverly's college years, and through Marie's cancer. We'd kept our promises, but somewhere along the way, I'd made a different kind of promise to Beverly, an unspoken one that I would always say yes, always write the check, always be the safety net, and she'd learn to count on it the way you count on gravity. The next morning, I woke up early in that chair. For years, getting up at dawn was Marie's habit, not mine. She used to say, "Curtis, the quiet before the world wakes up is when you hear yourself think clearly." I'd never understood that until I found myself at my kitchen table at 6:15 a.m., staring at my bank statements spread across the surface. I'd been tracking my finances carefully since Marie passed 3 years ago. When you're living on a teacher's pension and Social Security, you have to know where every dollar goes. But as I looked at the numbers now, really looked at them in the soft morning light coming through the window above the sink, I saw something I'd been too guilty to admit before. In the 3 years since Beverly met Wesley, I'd given them $89,000. I'd written it down once before in a notebook I kept locked in my desk drawer in the home office. But seeing it now, laid out like a construction budget across the kitchen table, the number felt different, heavier. An $89,000 was more than I'd earned in 2 years of engineering work back in the day. It was Beverly's entire college fund, the one we'd started when she was born, carefully depositing $50 every month for 18 years into a savings account at First National. And for what? I picked up my phone and scrolled through the text messages from Beverly. There were 3 from last night, all sent after midnight. "Dad, you're not mad, right? Wesley's family is just really particular about these things. Love you, can't wait for you to see me walk down the aisle." Walked down the aisle with Uncle Vernon and Wesley's father while I sat in a pew like any other guest watching the $58,000 wedding I'd paid for. That's when something inside me finally broke. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but quietly, like an old support beam that's been carrying too much weight for too long and just gives out. I opened my laptop on the kitchen counter and logged into my bank account. The joint checking account I'd set up years ago, the one that was supposed to be for emergencies, the one Beverly had access to for when she really needed help. The balance was $2,084.7. It should have been closer to $18,000. I clicked on the transaction history, scrolling down through the recent activity. $500 withdrawal from the ATM on Burnside. Emergency car repair, $1,200 withdrawal. Medical bill, $2,100 withdrawal. Surprise tax payment, all within the last month. All while I was writing checks for wedding costs. I sat back in my kitchen chair and let the truth wash over me. She wasn't just taking my money. She was taking it while actively shutting me out of her life. My engineering brain kicked in. This was a structural problem that needed to be fixed systematically. The next morning, I started gathering evidence. Real evidence, not just hurt feelings. I walked into my home office, a spare bedroom I'd converted after Marie died, with built-in shelves lining 2 walls and a desk facing the window that looked out onto our street. I pulled out my old project management software on the computer and started building a case file like I was investigating a construction defect. Every check I'd written, every transfer I'd authorized, every text message where Beverly asked for money. I organized it all in digital folders with timestamps and categories. Condo down payment, credit card bailout, Wesley's business investment, wedding costs, unauthorized withdrawals, but that wasn't enough. I needed real documentation. I called my bank first. First National, this is Kevin, how can I help you? Hi Kevin, this is Curtis Wheeler. I need to remove someone from my joint checking account. There was a pause, the sound of typing. All right, Mr. Wheeler? Let me pull up your account. Can I ask who you're removing, my daughter? I spent the rest of that morning making phone calls from my office, a cup of coffee growing cold on the desk. The bank, my investment advisor, my credit card companies, every account where Beverly had access, every automatic transfer I'd set up to make her life easier over the years. I closed them all, one by one, then I got smart about it. I drove to Best Buy and bought a home security system. For protection, I told the kid at the checkout counter, but really it was to capture conversations. I spent the afternoon installing cameras in the living room and kitchen, the common areas where Beverly usually came when she visited. Perfectly legal in Oregon when it's your own property. 3 days later, Beverly called. I was ready. I sat in my office chair, looking at the new security monitor showing the empty kitchen, and answered the phone on speaker. Dad, what did you do? The bank called me. They said you removed me from your accounts. All of them. I had the recording software running on my computer. That's right, Beverly. Why would you do that? Because I'm not a bank. I'm your father. I don't understand what that's supposed to mean. I leaned back in my office chair, looking at the organized file folders on my computer screen. It means I'm done being treated like an ATM with legs. That's not fair, she said, her voice getting louder. We needed that money. Wesley's business is just getting started and we have expenses. So do I. You're retired. What expenses do you have? I almost laughed. I'm 59, Beverly, not dead. I have a mortgage, utilities, medical bills, car insurance. I have a life that doesn't revolve around funding yours. You have plenty of money. She shot back. You're just being petty because of the rehearsal dinner thing. Petty? The word hit me wrong. The rehearsal dinner thing? You mean the part where you replaced me with Uncle Vernon? Where you decided I wasn't important enough to walk you down the aisle after paying $58,000 for your wedding? It's not about importance. It's about tradition. Wesley's family has certain expectations. I paid $58,000 for your wedding, Beverly. $58,000. That's not tradition. That's a down payment on a house. That's a new car. That's 2 years of my pension. Silence on the other end. Perfect. The recording was getting everything. And you know what? I continued, my voice steady as I watched the recording levels on my computer screen. I was happy to do it. I wanted to do it because you're my daughter and I love you. But I'm not paying for the privilege of being treated like I don't matter. Dad, you're overreacting. No. I said, I'm finally reacting the right way. What's that supposed to mean? It means the bank is closed, Beverly. Permanently, I could hear her breathing fast on the other end. You can't do this. Not now. The wedding is in 2 weeks. The wedding is paid for, I said, looking at the receipts still scattered across my kitchen table. Every penny. You'll have your perfect day. We need money for the honeymoon, she said, her voice shifting softer now, pleading. We were counting on you to help with that. You always said you'd help us get started in life. I've given you $89,000 in 3 years, Beverly. You're started? $89,000? She sounded genuinely shocked. That can't be right. It's right. I have the records, organized by date, amount, and purpose, just like a construction budget. Another long silence. I could hear voices in the background, probably Wesley asking what was wrong. Dad, she said finally, and now her voice was different. Cold. If you cut us off, you're going to regret this. Something in her tone made my blood run cold. It wasn't anger. It was something calculated like Wesley had been coaching her. Is that a threat? It's a fact, she said. We'll handle this our way. The line went dead. I sat there in my office chair for another hour, but instead of fear, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief, and I had it all recorded. 3 days passed quietly. I worked in the garage, organizing my tools and cleaning up projects I'd been putting off. I caught up on some engineering journals, took walks around the neighborhood, did normal retired guy things. Then Thursday morning, the doorbell rang. I opened the front door to find a man in his 40s standing on my porch, expensive suit, leather briefcase, the kind of polished smile that doesn't mean anything good. Curtis Wheeler? Yes. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a manila envelope. You've been served. My stomach dropped. Served with what? A lawsuit. Your daughter and her fiancé are suing you for breach of oral contract and promissory estoppel. They're seeking reimbursement for financial commitments you allegedly promised but failed to deliver. He handed me the envelope and walked back to his car like this was just another Tuesday for him. I stood in my doorway holding the envelope, looking at my quiet suburban street where I'd lived for 25 years. Mrs. Patterson was watering her roses next door. Kids were riding bikes on the sidewalk. Normal life continuing while my world was falling apart. I went inside, locked the door, and sat at my kitchen table. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Complaint for breach of contract. Plaintiffs Beverly Wheeler and Wesley Brooks. Defendant Curtis Wheeler. I read through the legal language. The defendant made repeated verbal promises to provide financial support for the plaintiff's honeymoon and future living expenses. The plaintiffs relied on these promises in good faith, making financial commitments they cannot now fulfill. The defendant willfully and maliciously withdrew promised support, causing significant financial and emotional distress. Amount sought, $25,000 for honeymoon expenses, emotional distress, and breach of trust. I read it 3 times before the words really sank in. They weren't just asking for honeymoon money, they were asking for damages. For emotional distress, for the crime of stopping them from draining me dry, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Wheeler, this is Carol Stevens, attorney at law. I'm calling because a colleague mentioned your situation. Do you have legal representation? How did you know about this small legal community, she said. In cases like yours are more common than you'd think. May I ask, have you been served yet? 20 minutes ago, and you're alone in dealing with this. I looked around my empty kitchen. Yes. Would you be willing to meet with me this afternoon? No charge for the consultation. 2 hours later, I was sitting across from Carol Stevens in her downtown office on the 12th floor of a building that overlooked the Willamette River. She was maybe 50 sharp eyes behind frameless glasses and the kind of calm presence that made you think maybe things would work out. Her office had law books lining one wall, a couple of diplomas and family photos on her desk. She read through the complaint carefully, making notes in the margins with a red pen. Well, she said finally, looking up at me. This is textbook financial elder abuse disguised as a contract dispute. Elder abuse? I repeated, I'm 59. You're approaching 60, you're a widower, and you have adult children making financial demands under threat of legal action. That fits the pattern. She leaned forward. Tell me everything, start from the beginning. So I did. The wedding costs, the years of support, the joint accounts, the rehearsal dinner exclusion, the threat Beverly made. All of it. I showed her the organized files on my phone, played her the recordings I'd made, walked her through my documentation system. When I finished, she sat back in her leather chair. Mr. Wheeler, this isn't just good record keeping. This is evidence that would make a prosecutor jealous. You've been thinking like an engineer, and that's exactly what we need. She pulled out a legal pad and started taking notes. Here's what's going to happen. They're claiming you made promises, but a promise to give a gift isn't legally enforceable unless it's in writing. And even if it were, you've already given them tens of thousands of dollars. Any reasonable person would say you've more than fulfilled any obligation. But they're claiming emotional distress. They're claiming that because they're desperate, Carol said. People who file suits like this are usually in financial trouble and see a parent as an easy target. They expect you to fold because you love your daughter and don't want the embarrassment of a public lawsuit. I'm not folding. I can see that. She made another note. We'll file a response denying all claims, then we'll countersue for harassment and abuse of process. And if they really want to push this, we'll demand they repay every penny you've given them over the past 3 years. My head was spinning. Is that possible? If we can prove the money was given under duress or with expectation of repayment, yes. Did you ever tell them you expected to be paid back? I thought about it. Beverly used to say things like, when Wesley's business takes off, we'll take care of you, Dad. You'll never have to worry. Things like that. Carol's pen moved faster. Perfect. That's consideration. That potentially makes it a loan, not a gift. She looked up. Mr. Wheeler, I'm going to be direct with you. This is going to get ugly. Your daughter is going to say things about you in legal documents that will hurt. She may claim you're incompetent, that you're manipulating the situation, that you're bitter about the wedding. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the rehearsal dinner, about Uncle Vernon walking my daughter down the aisle, about the $58,000 check, and the casual way she'd shut me out of her life. Yes, I said, I'm prepared. Over the next week, Carol and I built our case like I was managing a major construction project. Every bank statement going back 3 years. Every text message where Beverly asked for money, every email where I said yes, every withdrawal from the joint account. The audio recordings of our phone conversations, we organized it all in a thick binder with tabs and highlights. Carol called it our nuclear option. If they push this to court, she said, we show the judge exactly what kind of people they are. 2 weeks later, we stood in a courtroom downtown. Not a big dramatic room like in movies, just a small civil court chamber with fluorescent lights and worn carpeting that had seen better days. Beverly and Wesley sat with their lawyer at a table on the left side. I sat with Carol at the table on the right. The judge was a woman in her late 50s, Judge Ruth Martinez, with reading glasses on a chain and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd heard every excuse ever invented. Beverly's lawyer went first, young guy probably fresh out of law school trying to sound more confident than he looked. Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of promissory estoppel. Mr. Wheeler made repeated specific promises to fund his daughter's honeymoon and future living expenses. He presented their evidence. Text messages where I'd said, don't worry, I'll help. Emails where I'd written, I want you to have the wedding of your dreams. All taken out of context, all twisted to look like binding contracts. Then Beverly testified. She wore a pale blue dress, hair pulled back in a neat bun, minimal makeup, the picture of a wounded daughter. My father has always been my rock, she said, her voice trembling just right. After Mom died, he promised he'd take care of me. that I'd never have to worry about money. And I believed him. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Wesley and I planned our honeymoon based on Dad's promise. We booked flights, hotels, everything. And then out of nowhere, he cut us off. Said horrible things about Wesley, accused us of using him. She looked directly at me. I don't understand what happened to my father. It's like he became a completely different person. Then it was our turn. Carol stood up, calm and precise as a surgeon. Your Honor, the plaintiffs would have this court believe that Mr. Wheeler is a callous father who abandoned his daughter. Nothing could be further from the truth. She opened our binder. Over the past 3 years, Mr. Wheeler has given the plaintiffs $89,000. Not lent, given, with no expectation of repayment and no written agreement. She walked Judge Martinez through the documentation, every check, every transfer, every time I'd said yes when Beverly needed money. This is not a man who fails to support his daughter. Carol said, this is a man who was systematically exploited until he finally said enough. Then I testified. I told the judge about the rehearsal dinner, about being replaced by Uncle Vernon, about the joint account withdrawals I never authorized, about the threat Beverly made when I closed the accounts. Your Honor, I said, looking straight at the judge, I would have given my daughter anything. I did give her everything I could, but the moment I stopped, she sued me. That's not a daughter seeking her father's support. That's someone who sees me as nothing more than a source of money. The courtroom was quiet when I finished. Judge Martinez removed her glasses and cleaned them slowly. Let me make sure I understand, she said, looking at Beverly's lawyer. Your clients received $58,000 for a wedding, $15,000 for a condo down payment, and multiple other payments totaling nearly $89,000 over 3 years. And now they're suing for an additional $25,000 because Mr. Wheeler declined to fund their honeymoon? Your Honor, the promises were made. Alleged promises, the judge interrupted. Verbal statements of general support are not legally binding contracts, especially when, as Mr. Wheeler's counsel has demonstrated, he has already provided substantial financial assistance, far exceeding any reasonable expectation. She looked at Beverly and Wesley. I see this pattern frequently in family court. Adult children who have become accustomed to parental support and view it as an entitlement rather than a gift. When that support is withdrawn, they retaliate through the legal system. Beverly's face went white. Wesley started to stand up, but his lawyer pulled him back down. This court categorically denies the plaintiff's claim, Judge Martinez said. Furthermore, I'm troubled by the timing and nature of this lawsuit. Filing a claim for emotional distress while simultaneously excluding the defendant from a wedding he fully funded suggests this action was brought in bad faith. She picked up her gavel. I'm ordering the plaintiffs to pay Mr. Wheeler's legal fees, and I'm referring this matter to Adult Protective Services for review as potential financial elder abuse. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the small courtroom. Walking out of that courthouse into the bright Portland afternoon, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, not happiness exactly, but peace. The kind that comes from finally standing up straight after being bent out of shape for too long. 3 months later, I received a letter in my mailbox. Simple white envelope, handwriting I recognized. Dad, Wesley and I separated 2 weeks ago. Turns out he was only interested in me as long as the money was flowing. When it stopped, he found someone else whose family still had an open checkbook. I'm not asking for forgiveness or trying to get back into your life. I just want you to know that I'm starting to understand what happened. I treated you like you were only valuable for what you could provide. When you finally had the courage to say no, I punished you for it. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed you to know that I see it now. What I did, what I lost. I'm sorry, Dad. Beverly. I read the letter twice, then filed it in my desk drawer with all the other important documents. I didn't respond. Maybe I would someday. Maybe I wouldn't. But for now, I was okay with the silence. My name is Curtis Wheeler. I'm 59 years old, and for the first time in years, my life belongs to me. I learned that love doesn't mean letting people destroy you financially. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is teaching them that actions have consequences. When you finally stop being someone's ATM, you discover who really loves you and who just loves what you can provide.